I'm deeply concerned about the scale and speed of the epidemic. We will convene the emergency committee today to advise us on temporary recommendations. Beyond the confirmed cases, there are more than 500 suspected cases and 130 suspected deaths.
There is apparently an Ebola epidemic of international concern, but not concerning enough for Tedros' photo ops, of course. An Africa CDC that is saying it could become the worst in history if it is not contained. And there is a continuous mRNA vaccine push for just about anything. But there are a couple of things that we are to establish and emphasize here before we can even have this conversation. Number one, there is a bad outbreak of something, but it's not of international concern. Secondly, there is an Ebola hoax currently ongoing. And this is because the hantavirus scam did not take off. And then thirdly, Ebola could be a deliberate misdiagnosis of arsenic and mercury poisoning from gold mining. So let's talk all about it because I'm sure you've watched this video.
Thanks to all of you, the hantavirus is now out of the news cycle. They've now replaced it with the deadly Ebola outbreak in the Congo. But thankfully, the people are not having it.
Currently, I am in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for a couple months, okay? And there's no Ebola here. Everyone is living the best life. No one is panicking.
Mining gold is one of the top businesses over there, and it releases high levels of arsenic, which leads to arsenic poisoning, and arsenic poisoning and Ebola have the same symptoms. And again, they're using the same fraudulent PCR test to see if you have it. Even Tedros from the W.H.O came in for a photo op. This guy claims it's so deadly, but he walks around with no protective gear. Same with CNN. And guess what? Moderna just landed a $50 million funding to create an Ebola mRNA vaccine. And the funding came from CEPI, which is bankrolled by the Gates Foundation. You can't make this up. So the question becomes, why the Congo? This country sits on top of almost $500 billion worth of gold. And as war expands, gold takes value. Congo also leads the world in lithium, copper, and cobalt. Exactly what you need to build these electric cars and data centers. There's no coincidences here. You poison the people or use something that's already there, you build a narrative to control the area, and you drain the resources. So just like every other pandemic, this story needs to stay where it belongs.
The so-called Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo isn't a deadly virus ravaging innocent Africans. It's a cover story, a deliberate rebranding of widespread arsenic and mercury poisoning from unregulated gold mining in the Ituri province. And it's the perfect excuse for the anti-people gang. I'm talking about the W.H.O, CEPI, the Bill and Melinda Gates, Moderna, and the entire vaccine industrial complex to shake down taxpayers, funnel hundreds of millions into their pockets, and advance the real endgame, a globalist power grab, total population control, and the depopulation agenda. This isn't compassion when they talk about it. This is chronic capitalism mixed with eugenics on steroids.
Ebola is arguably the top shelf in pseudoscientific viral fear porn. It is part of one of the 5 families of alleged viruses said to cause hemorrhagic fevers.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
The establishment's 5 families are being used to create a contrived monopoly on the public health responses to this organised crime. This includes the manufactured market for so-called antiviral drugs and vaccines. And while the current market in the sector has already reached into the hundreds of millions in the last decade, it could be made even bigger. Indeed, the extra scare with the latest campaign is that the current Ebola vaccines don't work with this particular strain. Never fear, as the BBC just flew the headline, UK scientists developing Ebola vaccine that could be ready for trials in months. We are informed that the vaccine uses the same technology the team developed during the COVID pandemic. I'm not sure they appreciate that people might be less inclined to receive the results of such technology in their body again. Welcome to the pandemic industry, a behemoth that suppresses and loots vast amounts of wealth from the public while helping to advance the biosecurity surveillance state. The good news is that far more people than ever before are aware of this scam, and there is a simple solution. When you are presented with an offer to participate in any of these manufactured health crises, you can decide not to energize the situation. Instead, put your efforts into actions that will ensure real benefits towards true health and well-being. And perhaps you can help other people see there are plenty of better things they could be doing rather than supporting the pandemic industry.
Now, don't take my word for it. Look at the charts. Look at this particular picture. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, check for both. Severe abdominal pain and dehydration, identical. Fatigue, body aches, multi-organ failure, same. Even fever and shock in severe cases. Arsenic poisoning doesn't need a bat or a bushmeat index case. It doesn't spread through bodily fluids like a contagious outbreak. Yet the W.H.O and the CDC are running the same PCR playbook they used on COVID. Tests that can't distinguish toxic overload from a phantom virus. Communities are rejecting burial teams because they know the truth. Their relatives died from the mines, not some exotic African plague. This is medical colonialism that they're trying to do. The psychopaths swoop in, ignore the obvious environmental crime, and then turn suffering people into lab rats for their next funding round.
So if you start from the premise that the PCR test is incapable of diagnosing anything, and therefore being used by the government to declare a state of emergency with a fake PCR positive test, you begin to see very quickly the crime that's being committed, the fraud that's being perpetrated at you, the attempt to fool you into subsequent lies. Because if you buy the first lie, that the PCR test is diagnostic, then you will buy the subsequent lies that come from that, like the number of cases. So if you don't buy that PCR lie, that it's a legitimate diagnostic test, they can't take you any further in the propaganda. Do you see? It's really cool.
Now here's a smoking gun that should outrage every single taxpayer. In early 2026, global health groups quietly handed out tens of millions. Reports cite initial $26 million, then exploding to over $60 million to CEPI. This is from CEPI to Moderna and partners to develop a vaccine for, you got it, yes, the Debunking virus, the Debunking Ebola strain. 4 months later, boom, exact same strain appears in the exact mining region. By early June, CEPI, that globalist coalition tied to Gates and Big Pharma, announces massive new cash, and the Gates Foundation throws in $15 million more. No approved vaccine existed for this strain before. No urgent need. I mean, it's novel, it's new. Suddenly, there's a public health emergency of international concern, and the money printer goes, brrr, you got it. This is the same racket that we saw with COVID. Declare an emergency, scare the world, lock down the people, and enrich the connected. So why do we keep having these pandemic scares if Big Pharma is so wonderful? Because fear is profitable. They want perpetual emergencies to justify more global governance, more mRNA platforms, more control over sovereign nations, and of course, depopulation.
You had clued me into something, and I told you earlier that I don't believe in coincidences. Can you give me the timeline of these applications for the Ebola virus vaccines and now this outbreak and how this is so strange to be put together? Wink, wink.
Yeah, so this is I mean, you can't even make this up. So CEPI, the Center of Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, co-founded by the Gates Foundation, by the way, gave Moderna and the University of Oxford 4 months ago $26 million to develop mRNA and viral vector injections against the W.H.O strain, the same strain now in the Congo outbreak, the new outbreak. So 4 months ago, they began developing these genetic-based injections for that very strain. So that's very interesting, very strange. I do not know if that's a coincidence.
Remember that in 2018, remdesivir, one of my favorite targets, remdesivir was too unethical to put into Ebola clinical trials in Africa because it had a 53% kill rate published in medical journals. Ebola doesn't have a 53% kill rate, but it was chosen in April and May of 2020 to be the drug of choice to treat COVID. This drug was too unethical to use in an African clinical trial because it was killing 53% of the people that it was given to. And we had Anthony Fauci, Deborah Birx sitting next to the president going, we need to use remdesivir, despite the fact that the World Health Organization said it was unethical to use it. Here's the problem. The problem is, as long as the financial interest that dictates what product is going to be promoted is the one making the declaration of the pandemic, we have no possibility for accountability. We have no possibility for justice. And what we do is we allow people who were formed out of the eugenics office, Carnegie Mellon in 1913, that same group of people that were the same group of people that established the World Health Organization in 1953, that same group of people are the ones who are making this decision. And I don't know how you feel about eugenics, but I have a problem with it.
Now, this stops when we stop funding it. Demand Congress audit every dime going to the W.H.O, CEPI, the Gates Foundations, and these vaccine deals. Support real environmental accountability in mining, not endless emergencies. And stand with people, the people of Congo, against elite exploitation. Not with the bureaucrats turning their suffering into profit and population reduction. Real sovereignty means clean water, safe work, safe borders, and no more fake pandemics. Real compassion means addressing the arsenic and the mercury, not covering it up with fear and shots. The globalists want you scared, compliant, and fewer in number. Well, we want truth. We want freedom, strong families, and accountable nations. So do your research, question the narrative, defund the globalist machine, and never forget that when they say trust the science or the sustainable development, all you need to do is follow the power, and you will see that there's a body count. But thanks be unto God, because the restrainer is continuously victorious. We will not allow it. And indeed, the Lord disappoints them all at every turn.
Do you realize that even now, in spite of the fact that so many people have died as a result of the vaccines, many have been injured by these vaccines, do you realize that they haven't changed their minds? They're still insisting you get vaccinated with those mRNA vaccines that they know are dangerous to humans? They're not stopping there. They're insisting you get vaccinated for almost anything. Because the Bible already said what they're going to do. He told you already in the scriptures. It says the nations were deceived by pharmakeia, the production and administration of drugs. That's the pharmaceutical industry. Think what they've done in the world. And then the scriptures tell us about the several things that others are going to do to try to control the world, control nations. And they will. Make no mistakes about it, they will. But their time has been predetermined. It's not supposed to happen while we're here in the name of Jesus Christ. And we have the power to restrain them. And we're doing just that.